What is grace? We learned on Sunday morning that grace is undeserved blessing. But what does that mean? What does it look like? On Wednesdays this month, we'll be looking at what we're calling faces of grace. Examples of real people in the Bible who gave and received grace. They gave and received undeserved blessing. First up, can you open your Bible with me to Genesis chapter 41? Very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 41, where we want to start with Joseph and his brothers. When he was about 30 years old, Joseph was a really important person in the land of Egypt. Is your Bible open there to Genesis 41? You begin reading with me in verse 37. Genesis 41, verse 37. This proposal pleased Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the king of Egypt and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he, Pharaoh, set Joseph over all the land of Egypt. At just 30 years old, Joseph is a really important person. The second most important person in the greatest nation on earth at that time. But life hadn't always been easy for Joseph. Let's go a few verses or few chapters before this to Genesis chapter 37. Joseph was a part of a really big family. He was the 11th of 12 sons of Jacob. Can you imagine having that many brothers? Joseph was the 11th of 12 sons, and Joseph was his father's favorite son. Now, that might sound fun at first, but in many ways, that made Joseph's life really difficult. Is your Bible open there to Genesis 37? Let's start reading in verse 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. You've heard that before, the coat of many colors. His father gives just one to Joseph, his favorite son. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. A few verses later, we read about Joseph having some strange dreams about his family bowing down to him. And you look down at verse 8, the latter part of verse 8. His brothers hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Skip down to right around verse 18, where we read about one day Joseph's father is sending Joseph to check on his brothers. Is your Bible open there to verse 18? They saw him, Joseph's brothers saw him from afar, and before he came near to him, they conspired against him to kill him. They're so jealous of him, they just want to get rid of him altogether. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben, he's the oldest brother, heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." And Reuben was thinking that he would rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Eventually, you skip down with me to verse 25. Here come along some traders, some merchants, a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up, lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites. They sold their own brother into slavery. And this young brother, just 17 years old, ends up all the way down in Egypt. And there, if we were to keep reading, life doesn't get any easier for Joseph as a slave in Egypt. In Genesis chapter 39, he's got a tough choice about right and wrong, and he does the right thing, and he's thrown in prison anyway. But eventually, in Genesis 41, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, he has some strange dreams that nobody can interpret. Nobody knows what these dreams are all about except Joseph. And Joseph hears from God and tells Pharaoh that a great famine is coming, a time where it stops raining, and so there aren't any crops that grow, and food becomes to be very hard to find. You can't just go to a grocery store. You got to grow your own food, but the soil's bad, and there's no rain, and there's nothing to eat. A great famine is coming. And so Pharaoh says, well, why don't we put Joseph in charge? He's the one who knew this was coming. That's when, where we started reading in Genesis 41, Joseph becomes the second most important person in all of Egypt. He's in charge of all the food. And that famine does come. It comes all over Egypt. It comes all over the whole part of the world. People are hungry. People are desperate. They don't have the most basic things they need to feed themselves and their family. But there's food in Egypt because Joseph knew this was coming with the help of God. And he helped the Egyptians prepare. And so we've got people from all over the world coming to Egypt to buy bread. And who ends up coming? Looking for Joseph's help? Joseph's own brothers. The same guys that hated him and were jealous of him and talked about killing him, but sold him into slavery. In Genesis 42, can you find that in your Bible? Genesis chapter 42 and verse 6. This is more than 20 years after what they did to Joseph. Genesis 42 and verse 6. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces on the ground, just like Joseph had dreamed. And now, what was Joseph going to do? His brothers had been so mean, so hurtful, and now Joseph has all the power, and here they are bowing before him, looking for undeserved blessing. Now, I'm going to hand it over to your in-person class teacher, and we've got some questions there on the right side of your sheet all about what we can learn from Joseph's example. I hope that you'll keep building with us this coming Sunday and on Wednesdays throughout this month as we look at Faces of Grace. I'm glad you're here, and I'll see you real soon.